Okay, awesome. We are live. I'm excited today for our the right to remain vocal conversation, a candidate conversation with police. Today we're switching it up, so it's actually going to be a candidate conversation with Senator Brian Williams here in Missouri, and so we're excited to have him for him to be able to take that time to out of his busy schedule to make time for us to have this conversation, to talk about his upcoming reform bill, and to just give us some insight a little bit more on who he is, on what led him to become a senator. We also have Officer Shanette Hall here with Ethical Society of Police. And once again, they've been very helpful and instrumental in these conversations and providing officers to come and speak on police reform, and speak on the issues that are going on right now in society regarding police and in the community. So, with that being said, um, Clayton, if you would like to have to guide us through that this moment of silence and prayer, go ahead. Okay.
Yeah. Dear God, we come to you today. We lift up Mr. Blake to you as he was unjustly victimized by the police for something that he didn't even do. I pray that you keep him in good health and that you take him out of the critical condition that he's in right now, and that you see the need for justice and you carry that out swiftly and promptly. And that I pray for his kids, that they're able to learn from this and not hold bitterness in their hearts towards other people because of this. And I pray that they are able to cope with this and come be at peace with it. Because everyone around the world right now is upset at that. They're hurt. They hurt for them, and we want them to know that we care for them.
Thank you, Clay. And we're going to hop right in, and this is why we're having the right to remain vocal. This is why it's important, because there's what we're seeing right now is this influx of just these altercations between police and community. We're seeing unarmed black men, black women, either being hurt or being killed by police. And it's very important that we start creating some policy change for accountability and transparency within our police departments. So I wanted to ask our Senator a couple of questions. And first question is, just gonna, kind of lighthearted and want to get to know you, and then we're going to kind of dig a little deeper, okay? But tell us about yourself. Where are you from? Hobbies, and just what's life like in St. Louis? And then what made you want to become a senator?
Oh, absolutely. First and foremost, I want to thank you, Gabriella, as well as everyone that's on the call and listeners out there on Facebook for taking the time to engage in this conversation. I think it's extremely important that we not only engage around issues pertaining to police reform, have conversations about the importance of preserving Black lives, and most importantly, understanding exactly how your elected leaders like myself are advocating and what they're doing on behalf of all of you. And I'm really looking forward to having a conversation about that. I grew up right here in St. Louis, Ferguson, Missouri, single mom, one of the smartest, just the smartest person I know. And we were 19 years apart, and she was single. I was very lucky to have a village, grandparents who stepped in, was very supportive to my mom, very helpful in contributing to my upbringing. And as a young man, my mother and my grandmother always taught me that if I saw problems in the world, I had a responsibility to do my part and fix what I could where I could. So clearly, as I got older, I became interested in government, politics. I cared deeply about the issues that were facing our community, our neighborhoods, healthcare, jobs, things like social justice. And simply put, I was interested in making the world a better place for everyone. And it still drives me today in the state Senate, where I'm now serving as the first Black man in that chamber in nearly 20 years.
Wow. Wow. You said the first Black man in that chamber in 20 years. You know, I want to follow up on that. I mean, what is that like?
Well, when I go to work, I'm the only person that's in that capacity. So to be able to speak from the experience and the existence of a lot of issues that impact our community from the perspective of a Black man has been extremely important. And I think it's been a conversation and a perspective that just hasn't been available to that chamber and to my colleagues in 2 decades. So it feels good to be able to just talk about how Black men in particular are impacted by the policies that we focus on in the Missouri legislature.
Right. Well, that's amazing. And the fact that you have been able to rise to that position, of course, as a servant leader in your community. That leads me to my next question. What kind of leadership is necessary for creating effective and lasting change in St. Louis?
Well, I mean, it's a team effort. And I think what folks have to understand is that being a leader is not solely about being in an elected position. It's about folks coming together and not only holding each other accountable, but having conversations and being serious about doing the work. And when I think about things like police reform, my police reform bill that I filed, Senate Bill 16, that's something where it all came from just having conversations with so many different people in the community, whether it's the Ethical Society of Police and talking with Ms. Hall about just things that she sees in her space, or talking to activists, working close with organizations like the ACLU, talking to retired Black police officers like my uncle, who was a St. Louis City police officer for 27 years and retired without having to pull his gun, let alone shoot an unarmed Black man. So, that really played a significant role in how I went about this. But throughout this summer, I participated in marches and rallies all across the state, whether it's in St. Louis, I went to Springfield, Missouri, Jefferson City, Columbia, and I actually in Springfield spoke at a rally that had 2,000 people there, primarily white people that were advocating for Black lives. So that movement really inspired me and reminded me that we are all in this together. And we are in a time now where folks do understand and recognize that Black lives matter, but we also have to get justice for Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, Michael Brown, and now what we just saw in Wisconsin with Mr. Jacobs. So we have they should still be alive today, and I hope that what happened in Wisconsin doesn't lead to another fatality of a Black life. But I pray that we could save someone in this particular circumstance, and we'll see how everything plays out with that. But it's very inspiring. Clearly, it's not easy work trying to convince primarily our majority Republican legislature to understand the importance of challenges that impact the community that they have no connection to or may have never experienced anything close to it in their lives.
All right. Yeah, that's challenging indeed. What are your thoughts on the community's fight for justice?
Could you repeat that
What
question?
are your thoughts on the community's fight for justice? Kind of like how it's happening, how it's being done. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think that, you know, the community's response to it is extremely important. And, you know, Shanette's on this call, and she come to mind when I'm thinking about my response to this. It's so much more than just being visible in front of a camera. It's like, what are we doing when the cameras aren't around to ensure that we're working towards policies, we're working towards procedures, we're working towards ensuring that we are advocating in our daily lives in the best interest of Black people and preserving their lives when it comes to interaction with police. And I can tell you right now, with my police reform bill, this wasn't a bill that I filed just to say, oh, I'm filing a police reform bill. This is a bill we're going to get passed into law because I'm going to do everything I can to ensure that it gets across the finish line. And that's not easy work. That requires having to do your research, having to know what precedent is out there to justify why we need to ban things. For example, no-knock warrant arrests. Is a woman right here in St. Louis County, where I live and represent, had her dog killed for a no-knock arrest warrant for an unpaid utility bill. So that let me know right there that we need to ban no-knock arrest warrants. And just so folks that are listening have a little clarity about how this process goes, a judge has to sign off and approve for this warrant. So that means that there's a strong possibility that the police officer involved in this gave some type of misleading information to this judge in order to get a warrant for them to kick in this woman's door. So that already is an issue that we have, where we have law enforcement that is going into certain situations and they're changing the facts and they're perceiving people as being folks that they are not. And that's how we've gotten to this place now, is that they believe that they can go around the law to get justice in their eyes, and in the result of that, we're losing Black lives every single day, and folks are no longer having trust in the police department. I think you mute.
Oh, I was that you mentioned the policy change, and I wanted to you know, as we kind of we're going to go and define that and talk about that a little bit more. But how does the community create policy change? You know, a lot of times when we see different movements come up, you know, we see it, whether it be a lot of protesting or a lot of speaking out, but oftentimes, sometimes there's a deficit in the actual policy change. So help us, how does that start? What's that process for the community?
Well, one, in the community, we have to understand that there's a movement underway, and it's being driven largely by young people who know that our nation can be a better and safer place for everyone. So now it's time to turn that energy into action at the ballot box. You know, if you're going to be 18 before Election Day on November 3rd, then you need to register and vote now. If you won't be 18 by Election Day, make sure that all the adults in your life are registered to vote, and make sure that they cast a ballot on November 3rd. Tell your parents, you know, tell your grandparents and your aunts and uncles, folks you work with, to vote. And I'm not on the ballot this year, but it isn't about me. It's about the future that we want for our families and our community. So that's one way that the community can get engaged, is by participating in the voting process, but also understanding what the law in Missouri is and what are the people that are representing them doing to either uphold or to challenge that law. And that's why I filed a police reform bill, because I believe that we need to have uniform training in the state of Missouri. We need to ban chokeholds. We need to eliminate no-knock arrest warrants. We need to ensure that officers aren't sexually assaulting people that they're arresting, or correctional officers aren't sexually assaulting someone that is detained or held in a correctional facility. And we also need to have a uniform training in the state where folks, regardless of where you police and what community you police, there's a uniform code where they're following this protocol, and everyone is being held to the same standard. In return, we'll eliminate this subculture of bad police officers that have created this situation where even the good police officers are criticized and attacked for calling out their colleagues, or they're afraid to. So once we put procedures in place that really hold everyone accountable, that allows the good police officers to be able to come forward, and it allows us to be able to identify them from the bad ones.
Awesome. So to follow up in that, how do you define your role in creating that policy change? And then tell us, if you can, a little bit about the reform bill that you created.
So with the police reform bill, I kind of outlined a little bit, so I got a little bit.
Yeah, I heard a little too.
But primarily what this bill is going to do, and I'm going to also, anyone that wants to see it, we'll post on my page the comprehensive police reform plan, so folks can actually look at it and have a copy of it. But what it's going to do is it's going to do quite a few things. It's going to ban chokeholds. It's going to eliminate no-knock arrest warrants, ensure that police officers aren't sexually assaulting or expecting some type of advance in return of not arresting someone in the community or are sexually assaulting them. It also provides uniform training. It also addresses civilian arrest. As we know what happened with Ahmaud Arbery with civilian arrest, is that his neighbors or someone within his community either assumed or was under the impression that he had committed a crime 2 weeks ago and felt they could take it into their own hands. And I think that's completely inappropriate. So what this bill does is that it puts more accountability on law enforcement. It eliminates the things that fall within the council doctrine and stand your ground, similar to what happened with George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin, where we're not only forcing civilians to no longer interact with people in the state as if we don't have an organized police department, but also ensuring that law enforcement can come to a safe situation. What happened in the Central West End with the McCloskey family, if someone was standing on the sidewalk or the street, not within their the boundaries of their property, then by law they would be not only charged and arrested, but they would also be held accountable for brandishing a firearm. There wouldn't be any question about them protecting themselves and standing their ground. It would say you need to call law enforcement, and you're not allowed to take any of these actions into your own hands. Another one that's really important also is ensuring that there's a uniform law when it comes to body cameras, not just when they're convenient. And then I think also we need to be clear about this. We need to address how we recruit in the police department. So there needs to also be a true effort to ensure that we are recruiting police officers. And I've seen it in a small section of St. Louis County Police Department with what Mr. Hall is doing. But we need to make that a little bit more expansive, where throughout the state, we're recruiting folks, especially in St. Louis and Kansas City, primarily urban communities, have police officers that look like them and that have a connection to those communities. So those are some of the things that Senate Bill 16 will do. And right now, we're extremely optimistic that with the support of the community, clearly working through the barriers of the legislature, we can get this done in the next session.
Awesome. It's awesome. And those points in that bill are right on time, much needed. Big thing that stood out to me, what you said, was making sure that the police in Black and brown communities, actually look like the communities that they're serving. That's really important. And in some cases, hopefully even, live in the communities they serve. You know, and then we know that that can't always be the case, but I think that that creates that understanding of the community and moves. I don't know if I was speaking to Officer Hall about this or if I was speaking to, I want to say it was Officer Moody. I could be butchering his last name, but we had another officer after Hall, and one of the things that we talked about is the differences between how in one community, when you see in it predominantly Caucasian white communities, there's like this sense of protect and serve. But then in other communities and in the Black and brown communities, it's guard and contain, and so just those differences that creates a lot of situations and leads to some of the escalations and some of these senseless killings that happen between police and the community. Where do you think Black women and Black men stand on the issue of community and police? And then what are their combined responsibilities to seeing better law enforcement practices in their communities?
Well, I think one, it starts with just leadership. And when I filed this bill, and I said something earlier that I always make clear to folks, including my colleagues in the legislature, is that I'm not on the ballot, so I'm not running for anything. This is something that I'm doing because I have a personal connection to it. I know what it's like to be an 18-year-old home from college and being pulled over in North County and handcuffed on the sidewalk with my 3 other friends because we were driving while Black. All college students, didn't do anything wrong. And to think about not only how that made me feel, but that was the way of life. I mean, we view police as that's what they do. And once I just reflect on it and I think about who I am today, as that happened to some 18-year-old kids, they not only violated our rights, but that was completely inappropriate.
Right.
And the thing that Black people in our community think that police are doing us a favor by letting us go when they shouldn't have been detaining us or pulling us over in the first place.
Right.
So we need to make sure that we understand that. And I think, we have to have leaders that are going to fight for these issues, that's going to be pragmatic and strategic about getting these things done, that's not doing it for a political stump, that's not doing it just to be able to say they did it, but they doing it with serious intention on getting it into law so we can enhance the quality of life for people in this community that have been victim or have lived in communities that have been victim and subject to police brutality or misconduct.
Right. Indeed. And there's a concept that goes around when we're talking about police brutality and victims of police violence. Oftentimes, the deflection of Black on Black crime comes into play. And I wanted to ask you, do you feel like that this, whether or not you feel like this concept of Black on Black crime is relative to police reform? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And I had a long conversation with the governor of Missouri about this. We're currently in the middle of a special session to address violent crime. And I was one of 3 Democratic senators to vote against this crime bill that would send kids as young as the age of 12 to prison and be tried as an adult. And the reason I voted against this particular crime bill that the governor was pushing was because of the fact that I know majority of those kids that they would be looking to put in prison look just like you and I. And if we should be focusing on putting young people in general, but let alone Black kids, in a position to be successful by getting a quality education, by having the resources they need to figure out how to go into high-level job training to make a livable wage, ensuring that they have access to resources, mental health services, access to health care. We need to be figuring out how to enhance the quality of life of people and not just lock them up. And in terms of where my police reform bill falls in the bigger picture of all this, the governor stated that this bill that he's pushing has a witness protection program. I can tell you right now that everyone on this call knows if you don't feel comfortable going to law enforcement, you're not going to talk to them about things you see that's happening in the community from bad actors. You're not going to, if you got a bench warrant for driving with expired license tag or no insurance because of the fact that you are unemployed or laid off because of the pandemic or just don't have the money to do it, but you still need to get to work. You still need to get your kids to school. And you see something happen, folks in our community go from being the person that gives the information to help take down someone who might have committed a serious crime, but they end up becoming a criminal in the process. So my bill also provides discretion to police officers to where they don't always got to lock people up for having a bench warrant or having a warrant for a nonviolent offense. How come we can't look at trying to figure out how to build that trust and really get to a place to where the community feels comfortable coming forward? So none of this crime bill is going to make a difference if the community isn't involved. And police, we've seen not only through statistics, but through experiences and research to show that police officers need the help of the community to be able to do their job. So if the community is afraid of them or don't have any trust, then all of this is for nothing. And that's how I view the crime bill, and that's why it's
in talking about that trust between the police and the community, I wanted to just bring up the concept of good cops and bad cops. What is your thoughts on that concept, and can a few bad apples actually spoil the bunch?
Well, and one, we have to be real with ourselves now. And I made this clear to a lot of folks. My uncle retired from the St. Louis City Police Department after 27 years. And I share this story with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who's pro-police, and let them know I'm not anti-police. My uncle, who not only served 27 years in the police department, he would have probably done 30 if my aunt wasn't afraid that he may not make it home safe one night. So we know this is a very dangerous, serious job. But in the same breath, we need to understand that, like every profession, if you got one bad actor, then that bad actor is going to have an impact on a larger group unless that larger group stands up against that bad actor and start eliminating this subculture of bad police officers who have clearly tainted the profession of being a police officer and don't uphold or live to the oath that they made to serve and protect the community.
Yeah. And with that, when you're talking about that oath and you're talking about that accountability that should take place, there was the term that was going around, and this term kind of sprung up right after George Floyd, his murder by Derek Chauvin, and the concept was defunding the police. What are your thoughts on this concept and this term?
Well, one, we do need to figure out how to reimagine public safety. And we need to ensure that we are taking funding and resources and putting not only police officers in a position to be well equipped when dealing with the community, but also have resources available to tackle every situation, because there's so many different ones, whether it's having a social worker on hand, whether it's having community liaisons, whether it's ensuring that we're working towards de-escalation tactics and demilitarizing the police department to where folks aren't intimidated when they see the police by having things like tanks and all this stuff rolling through our communities. The other side of it is this too. Next time we come up with the public policy such as defunding the police, which I wholeheartedly agree with the intention and what it means, but I think we need to think of a different term next time because I think the branding is just terrible.
Yeah. And you know, with that, you mentioned that there are some things that looks like
I think reallocating is a better term.
Yeah,
like
reallocating is a better term. And, you know, and what we have to also understand, too, is that, you know, when you're dealing with the community, we got to be very clear on what our intentions are. You know, with Senate Bill 16, I was very clear about really putting into layman's terms what this bill was going to do and what it was going to do to ensure that there's accountability measures for police departments throughout the entire state. But I wasn't going to just lay out this dissertation for our community. I was very clear about what this bill was going to do and what we're trying to do. And what we're trying to do is ensure that police departments have accountability measures in place. We're getting rid of bad actors, and we're promoting equity and equal opportunity in the police department in the name of having a strong and productive and trustworthy relationship with the community.
Right. And with that being said, you know, I know Clayton, you know, kind of had a reframing of that phrase, and then you broke it down for us as to what, you know, that could look like. And I know that, you know, for a lot of people hearing it, it kind of had like this like immediate negative connotation. You know, then you start seeing the videos where police are saying, you know what, we're quit, we're done, y'all defunding us, you know. But
absolutely, and you can't, not to cut you off, okay, but you can't politicize Black lives, and that's the problem. Is that everybody's trying to politicize this to be able to make it divisive and take a side. I made it very clear when I spoke to the governor. This isn't an us versus them situation. Mm-hmm. This is, don't look. If you're a good police officer and you engage with the community and you understand the importance of treating folks right and not shooting Black people because you're afraid of them, or not assuming that they committed a crime, or just because you have a perception of a Black person gives you every reason in the world to carry this high level of misconduct, then you need to go. But if you're a police officer that's upstanding like an Officer Hall, who has dedicated her career to calling out even her own to ensure that there's accountability in the police department, and we're also making sure that we're getting rid of those bad actors. So that's what this is about. This is about bad police. This is about bad policing. This is about not having reforms in place to understand that in Missouri by law, we still allow citizens and we allow our state to carry an attitude as if we don't have a civilized and organized police department. So not only do we have bad police officers, but we empower our citizens in the state to be able to take things into their own hands, and then let alone dismiss law enforcement and allow that to be inflicted within a scope of the law where it's all considered okay.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. Agreed. Right. And these reforms you mentioned some reforms and some remapping, reimagining police and funding. So what are your thoughts on some trainings and resources that can help police better serve their communities, remain healthy, and understand the communities they serve?
Well, one, I think it's, you know, prior to serving in the state Senate, I was always a strong advocate for mental health disparity, behavioral health. I serve as a board director for People's Health Center, which is a community health center here in St. Louis. We were able to work towards building the first behavioral health center right in the urban core for folks in the urban community to be able to have access to behavioral health issues for children. I think understanding things like mental health disparity, understanding things like trauma, and knowing that none of us are exempt from that, and allowing not only the community to have resources to accommodate those challenges, but also making them available to law enforcement. Because I can tell you right now, there's a lot of police officers who are traumatized either during their time in the police department or before. So
Right.
we need to figure out how to make sure that those resources are available. And instead of spending money buying military equipment, instead of sending that money to all these underlying corporate interests in the name of empowering private entities under public welfare and public entities, we need to start figuring out how do we bring those services into the public sector and allowing the large community to invest in our own community by having services available to us and law enforcement that falls within a scope that's driven by community service.
Awesome.
Hey, Gabe, if I can, if
feedback.
you don't mind for a second.
Go ahead, Ms. Hall.
So one of the things with speaking with Senator Williams, and to almost even piggyback of what he said, reallocation of funds when we're talking about defending the police is what people normally mean. But I think Senator Williams actually stumbled on something that's a great coining of the term reimagining police. And so now we have to get to the point of reimagining and defining what police should be for the people that are not only in St. Louis County, but in the St. Louis metropolitan area, now in the state of Missouri. So reimagining police is not necessarily a bad term. I actually think you stumbled on, like I said, stumbled on something very great. And you should keep on using that. And one of the things that I know that Senator Williams spoke of as well when he's talking about his bill that he is introducing of standardizing training. One of the things that can be introduced when standardizing training is making sure that officers are receiving some type of training as it relates to cultural competency. Because what we are seeing is you have officers that are unable to relate to the people that they are policing and or underserving, if you will. And so when you are equipping officers with this certain sense of this cultural competency, like I said, as it relates to race, ethnicity, culture, religion, gender, what have you, they are better equipped to be able to understand the people that they are dealing with. And it comes out to just be a better situation towards the end. So I think it's extremely important to understand what it is that Senator Williams is attempting to do with this bill and how much of an impact it's going to have on the state as a whole. And he's not trying to change many things. He's trying to reimagine at this point. And we have to push forward. And we have to begin to know that, yes, where we've come from in the policing world has not been the best for a number of different people. But what it is that he is trying to do, he's simply trying to make it better for everyone. And so it definitely deserves a lot of attention. It definitely deserves a lot of support. And the Ethical Society supports it. A number of other people, I know he said the ADL, all these different people. But I mean, if that's something that you can really dive into what it is that he is trying to do, it would definitely be better for all of us. And I'm speaking from police departments, Black women, everybody. So I just had to add that in there. Keep that reimagined police.
Yeah,
that was great.
Yeah, I like that too.
You see why she's such a champion in our community, because that's she summed it up perfect. And I mean that's where we need to be with all of this, is really reimagining how we do things in this state. And I think what a lot of folks have to understand too now is that I was forced to really dive in deep and understand what the systemic challenges were, not only in St. Louis and Kansas City, but rural parts of the state. Because we've had cases where someone was driving in from Memphis, Tennessee, came in the Boot Hill of Southeast Missouri and lost their life. We have situations in Springfield, Missouri, and some of these small towns, predominantly Black communities like Haytie, Missouri, and the Boot Hill of Missouri. These folks have never, when I went to these different communities, when I tell you, they would stare at me almost as if I mean, just in awe, because they have never had anybody in a position of power, any position to advocate for their existence, let alone look like them.
Oh
And
my
to think
God.
that we are fortunate to at least live in a community where we could say that, we have, Black leaders speaking about some of these issues. And to think that these folks have never ever seen that or been in a position to even know that that's possible, it's extremely powerful. So when you make Missouri a safe place, when we travel throughout this state, I mean, right now, to think in Missouri, there's still a travel ban advisory in Missouri for people of color, to where they say this is not a safe state to drive through in
Yeah.
any capacity. So the way that we change that is by ensuring that we have safe police departments. But the thing is, when I talk to law enforcement and I say, hey, look, what I'm trying to do is work with you to come up with a solution. But this is I didn't have to read no dissertation, man, to know that I didn't need to go through social work school to know
Right.
that when I was 18 years old, I got pulled over for driving while Black. And
Right.
the only thing that saved my life was that I was raised to really do something that I shouldn't have to do, and that was just to shut the hell up and not defend myself or upset them.
Right.
So I had to violate my own rights
Mm.
just to be able to get out of that situation alive.
Yeah.
So
Shouldn't
in
have to.
2020, folks should not have to violate their own constitutional rights just to be able to live when they interact with police. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
And that's why we
Yeah.
need to change it. And, this is something I have a personal connection to. And I always think about James Baldwin, who was you guys know, famous Black author. And he summed it up nicely. He said, know from whence you came. If you know whence you came, there's absolutely no limitation where you can go. And that I truly believe that there's no limitation where we can go with making our communities stronger, demanding that our communities get the same respect that more affluent communities, that law enforcement demands. There should be a mutual respect for each other, and we can get there. And once we know from where we came and we look at the journey, which is not done, but keep moving forward, we can get there. But it has to be everybody on deck, all hands on deck. And folks got to really listen. And that's why I tell people, take the time out to listen to what the community is saying. Listen to these young people. Listen to the activists. Listen to the seniors in the community who are afraid to walk out of their homes because they live in such dangerous communities. And the reason those communities are dangerous is because the police don't have a relationship to be able to go in there and be able to not only deal with people that are committing crime, but also respect the folks that just want to live and have a quality life.
Yes.
And that's not mutually exclusive. Preserving Black lives and quality policing and reimagining public safety is not mutually exclusive to gun violence. Because I know we got a gun violence issue in this state, in this city. I'm sorry, and I'm the first person that'll say last session where I advocated and I stood with various organizations to eliminate folks carrying assault weapons, to ban assault weapons and firearms off of college campuses and public transportation. I fought against that and kept that from going into law. And then I said, why don't we go back to what you guys did in 2007, where y'all allowed this to become a open carry state. And since this has become an open carry state, our state has went up to close to over 25% increase in violence since that law has went in place, and it's been less than 15 years for that to have happened. So make it a safe place where we getting the guns off the street. I can tell you, these young kids and the people in our community that has guns, they're not getting them from themselves. It's coming from outside of the community. And if we cut down on gun sales, we stop allowing people to sell guns freely. We require a license and carry permit to not only protect our community, but to protect law enforcement. And then get back to really controlling gun violence at the root cause issues and not just trying to lock people up.
Thank you, Senator, for that feedback through. You actually summed up a lot of even going back to that exclusivity between gun violence and the issues of police, and making sure that that was clarified, and knowing that, hey, these issues are not exclusive. As we kind of get to the end here, I have two questions left for you, and then after that we will allow for other people that have questions. I know that they can chime in through the live. So, what advice or tools can people use to ethically defend themselves against these breaching of rights and laws by police?
Well, I think it's a couple of things that we can do, but first is know your rights. And I think understand and know exactly what interaction should happen and what your rights are if you were pulled over at a traffic stop or if you were confronted by law enforcement. And then secondly, understand that advocating for these issues and fighting for these issues is not something that we just do when something happens to us. And I think that that's the problem. Folks sit on the sideline until, someone kill one of their relatives, or they sit on the sideline until the police pull them over and violate their rights. We need to be a champion and really voicing this situation. But I'm going to go a little bit deeper. We need to be ensuring that we lend a hand and a voice to our good police officers that are calling out the bad actors. Because, we got a situation now where you have folks from the community speaking against their own kind that are trying to help eradicate some of this bad behavior because they don't want to break the culture shift, or they don't want to step outside of the club. And I have to do it every single day. I made a oath as a state senator to be not only a voice for our community, but to be an ethical voice of integrity. And every single day, I have to do that, regardless of what's happening around. I have to understand that who I am and what I stand for is what I need to be about, and I don't need to really shift that and only use it when it's appropriate and when it's convenient for me. And I think that goes for for politics as well, because I can tell you right now, it's a lot of politicians that talk a good talk, but they really ain't doing nothing, man. So if y'all want to keep it real, that goes in the police department and every other profession. You got a lot of people out here that's doing stuff for likes and posting pictures on social media, but when it's time to get to the real board meeting, they sleep at the wheel. So we need to recognize that, and we see it at the national level with the White House. We got a president who resorts to fear tactics every time somebody calls him out for his shortcomings and bad decision making.
Yeah. And a key thing in that last piece you said, working with the police, the good police who are serving the community, and that leads into our last and final question. What are ways that the community and law enforcement can really mend that relationship?
One, I think by supporting not only my comprehensive police reform bill, but I think taking the time to really get to know the community, listening to police officers that have ideas on making the police department more accountable and transparent, ensuring that the police department as its own entity is an equitable and fair place. We need to make sure that Black police officers have a voice and have a space in the police department, because that's not always the case. So how do we expect, if the police department has shortcomings, have racial injustices and circumstances happening within the police department, how do we expect that to transfer over to quality and transparent community policing. So this is truly a systemic issue that we have to get to the root causes, and that starts by hiring practices, that starts by ensuring that there's leadership at the top of police departments that are transparent, that believe in community policing, and then also having a community and elected officials that are going to work together to ultimately enhance the quality of life of people and not make this about divisive tactics of us versus them.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up, you know, I appreciate you. Yes, like we are doing great on time here, and I just wanted to give you know, anyone in the audience, anyone watching on the live, even here in this room, an opportunity to you know, ask some questions. I'll be looking through the comments, you know, to see if there was anyone who asked anything. But I mean, you came with it, and you were clear and concise, and you know, and so yeah, so this was great. So I'll be looking through that. If I know Clayton's here in the room with us, and we have Ms. Hall in the room with us. Do you guys have any questions or anything you want to chime in on?
Miss Hall, you got to remember, Miss Hall, she makes her voice heard through various channels. So it didn't take me getting on the chat. She gets her message to me when she needs to. So,
Yeah,
so
I mean,
if she don't have a question, that means she asked it already, or it's coming at some point.
No, I think this is an amazing thing. I think it's it's good what you're doing, Gabe, of trying to make this as clear as possible when we're trying to get this message out. And oftentimes, we don't want to take any shine away from anybody. As long as somebody is doing the work, we got to get behind it. Yeah. Oftentimes what we know is it's not always about the deliverer, but it's about the delivery. And at this point, we're trying to protect this delivery and get this message across the board that Black folks are dying. Yeah. We're dying. Like, we're dying. We got to get that message to the people who can make the change, because this is a collective effort, right? This is not just about Black folks, white folks, Democrats, Republicans, liberal, the self-proclaimed liberals, or all these other people that are. It's not just about them, the ones that think they have the answer. We got to get all this out there. But say something my mother would say is, we got to get off our tail and on our feet, and we got to start doing some things. And there's plenty of things around here we can do, like showing up to the police board meetings, making sure you're complaining on officers, making sure you're complaining on leadership, making sure you're complaining on those politicians too that Senator Williams said that they're not doing anything, understanding the difference between policies and politicians, making sure you're coming out and knowing your rights, knowing the other person. I mean, there's so much that we can do that you can't do it all, but you can do something. So do it.
You can do something. And I do want to share one more thing for anybody that have time tomorrow evening. I'm going to be having a conversation with a gentleman named Andre Perry, who's a notable brother who has spoke to structural racism, and he commentated on numerous national platforms. We're going to have a conversation, and I put the link on my Facebook page through Washington University School of Law at Brookings Institute, and that's tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. And it's called From Ferguson to Minneapolis, Where Do We Go From Here? And we're going to have a candid conversation. I'm really interested to hear what his thoughts are. I'm going to talk about not only police reform, but how do we move forward from Ferguson to Minneapolis, not only being someone who grew up in Ferguson, but also understanding the challenges of police brutality and the importance of police reform. So if any of you have some time tomorrow, please register for that event. It's free. Check it out. I think it's going to be a really good conversation. And Andre also talked about his book, which is another really cool book that he just came out with, that's talking about how we reimagine police department, what it looks like to be a minority trying to survive, not only through stressful times of challenges of the community, but now through a pandemic. Right. So please check that out if you get a second tomorrow evening.
Yes, sir. That's awesome. And what I can do too, I'll make sure that I share that on my page as well,
Mhm.
if it's shareable. And just to give everyone a heads up, this meeting will be also put on YouTube. So I'll be taking it from the live and putting it on my page on YouTube to then bring it back and just make sure I try to get it out there as much as possible for people who weren't able to join tonight. Once again, Brian Williams, thank you so much. And I'm glad to see that you're drinking water. You're taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I'm taking care of myself, man.
Yes, sir.
And I hope everyone else that's listening is taking care of themselves. And when I tell you,
Yeah.
Clayton, Officer Shanette Hall, it means a lot that for the work you all are doing and just being tuned in to what's happening in our community. Please continue to talk about Senate Bill 16 and what we're trying to do around police reform, just to educate the larger community. And most importantly, we'll get to a point to where we got to continue to put pressure on our elected officials to have this conversation. Not only what I'm doing at the state level, but this needs to be happening at the local level. And there's no reason why in St. Louis City and in St. Louis County, where I live and represent, local government's not taking serious steps towards ensuring that our communities are safe and our police departments are accountable.
Indeed. Well, you all heard it. Once again, thank you, Senator Brian Williams. We also have Officer Shanette Hall here from Ethical Society of Police. They've been very instrumental in connecting me to officers who's willing to have conversations on these subjects. And so we will definitely be hearing more from their officers as well. And my hopes in going forward with the Right to Remain Vocal, a candid conversation with police, is to have a panel discussion, where we're able to just I want questions just from the audience. And so that will be coming in the near future. This video will be recorded and added to YouTube, and then I'll be sharing that as well. And this is all about, as Officer Hall had said earlier, just making sure that the message is clear, that it's coming from law enforcement, it's coming from our representatives, our senators, and that it's concise and it's not, essentially the as the age-old saying goes, you're hearing it from the horse's mouth.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited about this. I'm excited about Bill 16, right? I'm excited about Bill 16, and I'm excited about the work that's being done. And so, right to the rights to remain vocal, keep speaking, keep informing one another, keep holding each other accountable to change. And that is all for this time. Until next time. All right, thank you all.
Everyone stay safe.